Long Preston is a village in Ribblesdale, at the southern edge of the Yorkshire Dales. It has a long and rich history, particularly as it has a good written historical record as a result of its ownership, and a layout of crofts and greens which has changed little since the Middle Ages. But what connects the monastic house that owned land here from 1304, the last Prior of Bolton Abbey, and the nursery rhyme, "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon"? The key to this is Richard Moon, the last Prior of Bolton Abbey, a man born in Long Preston, and whose silver chalice, given to the parish in his will of 1541, is in regular use to this day. We have no image of Richard Moon, and so, for this story, we have used a detail from the Victorian Capronier stained glass in St Mary's Church in Long Preston. Here, at Bolton Abbey, is a record of his years in office, and within the tower that bears his name, started in 1520 but only roofed in the 20th century, is a small memento, the moon symbol and his initials R.M. Secular buildings of the monastic period do not survive in North Craven, but a few 17th and 18th century buildings have reused crooks from earlier buildings as roof supports. We are in the unique position of having reused crooks in two buildings, which documentary evidence enables us to connect with former monasteries.
Cruck structure, Cruck construction building. Probably this actual building, but the bits were reused in the roof truss of 1708. Now we know that Bolton Priory owned the crofts here and that they had a barn and a dwelling on this site, and it looks from features in this barn that this is the barn that was actually belonging to Bolton Priory, and it appears that it probably had a cruck construction inside with low eaves and a thatched roof. And in 1708 the old roof was taken apart, cut up and made into this magnificent new roof truss of 1708. The moon connection as well. Prior Moon was the last Prior of Bolton Priory, and his family also farmed here, and after the dissolution as well the Moons were still here, and it's Richard and Ellen, I think, Moon, whose initials are on the tie beam here with 1708. So we've even got the same family carrying on.
Each year the tree grows, it produces an annual ring. In the spring you get spring cell growth, which are lighter, and then summer cell growth, which is darker, and the two together make 1 year's growth. And each year a new ring is laid down towards the outside edge of the tree. And over the lifetime of the tree, the width of the rings vary according to the growing conditions. So that over the lifetime of a tree, there's a kind of a climatically imprinted growth pattern that is unique to a particular time period only. So what we'll do back at the lab is sort of get that pattern of wide and narrow rings, and it looks rather like a supermarket barcode or a DNA kind of a pattern. We'll take that pattern by measuring the width of each ring and comparing the growth pattern to a reference or a datum set that we've got, that we already know the date of, and the computer would say, oh, this pattern only occurs between year A and year X.
And that's how you can then date these
Date the beams.
The Yorkshire Abbeys of the Middle Ages were important landowners. Nearby land was owned by Sawley, Furness and Fountains Abbeys. The other site we had dendrodated was Lower Winskill Barn, farmed by Tom Lord. The farm was a grange owned by Sawley Abbey, and records have allowed Tom to trace back the likelihood of the Cruck beams in his barn dating back to the Middle Ages.
Well, it's got a notch in the middle of the
High beams are slightly different.
yes.
Both of them.
So perhaps not enough rings.
Not quite, no.
So Tom, what's going to, when you've got this date that we hope we get, how's that going to fit in with the history of the farm, do you think?
We've got documents, and there's a 17th century document which talks about the Great Barn, and it's earlier than the rebuilding of the house in 1675.
Right.
And so the idea is that the Great Barn might be a medieval structure from the time of Sawley Abbey, and that these timbers might be from that time, but we need some dates.
Yeah.
We need some dates.
It helps.
It's a sycamore.
Can you add something to the music?
You can see these lines, and you get a light layer and a dark layer every year.
Yes.
So if you're very carefully, you've got to do it very carefully because you've got to look very closely. You can count these lines and see how old this branch is. And there was a different building here that had wooden beams holding the roof up, and some of the wooden beams have been recycled in the roof of this barn, and that's what I'm going to show you now. They are some of the recycled pieces from the building that was here put up by Sawley Abbey, we think. And we will know for certain when the dates come from what is called dendrochronology. That is looking at the tree rings in those beams, and you can work out the date. And when you get back to school and look on the website, you'll find out more about how this works. But we're not quite certain yet of the ages of the beams, but that's why they have been sampled for dating. And this scaffolding here is up because a chap called Robert went up there and he had a special drill, and he drilled right through these big beams, and he took out a sample of the wood, and you could see all the tree rings on the sample. And what he's going to do is then compare that to the pattern that they already know, and they'll work and they'll see, these are some good years, these are some not so good years, and then we've got some more good years, and they can see when they were.
An important part of the project is to provide the children of Long Preston School with an exciting way to explore the historic links between the development of their village and the role of the monasteries. The children visit Skipton Castle to find out what has happened to the Bolton Priory land in Long Preston after the monasteries ceased to exist. It passed into the hands of the Cliffords of Skipton, and a survey was undertaken in 1579 to establish George Clifford's income when he became the 3rd Earl of Cumberland.
And the Shepherd Lord actually financed the tower of Prior Moon. He financed that tower.
Oh, how did they?
Yep. And when the Shepherd Lord died, money dried up. And that's why the tower was never finished. And Prior Moon's tower wasn't finished because the money had dried up, but it was at a similar time
To the Reformation.
to when Henry VIII was getting rid of the
The
monasteries.
lady from the Priory has got the story of the little dog laugh, isn't it? He's
Yeah.
run away with his spoon, so it'll connect in nicely
Yeah,
with what
there's a theory that Prior Moon, who came from your village, he bought a cow off a man called Hay, and it wasn't a good deal, he did. So.
Hey diddle diddle, and the cow jumped over the moon. The last visit for the school children of Long Preston was to Bolton Priory, to learn some more and to see if they could find a little dog laughing.
Built, and we'd have to be left without a roof, and that's why our roof is so long, because it is long. It's the only roof it's ever had, because they were all sent away and the building just got stopped. Now, what is the connection with Long Preston? Can you tell me what the connection is with Long Preston?
Is it that the structure of the family also land?
Well, that's very good. This young man says the Clifford family owned lots of land, and they did. But the point was that our last prior was born in Long Preston. So Long Preston is very important to us, because we liked our last prior. Does anyone know what our last prior was called? Richard Moon, yes, Richard Moon. How many of you are called Moon? Has anyone here got the surname Moon? Well, there you are. It's a very famous name, isn't it? And we are very fond of moons here.
And so, on the outside wall of Prior Moon's tower, for Bolton Priory, a little dog laughed to see such fun. At Long Preston Endowed School, the final assembly of the year was a momentous occasion. The King's Singers of Cambridge, a famous a cappella choir, had kindly agreed to sing to pupils, staff and parents at the last assembly, and include in the concert their own arrangement of Hey Diddle Diddle. After the mini-concert, they sat down as roles were reversed, and almost the whole school sang their own tune and arrangement of the nursery rhyme to general acclamation.
Diddle diddle the cat and the fiddle the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such fun, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Hey diddle diddle the cat and the fiddle the cow
In autumn, the results of the dendrodating were made available. In Guy's Villa Barn, Long Preston, 4 of the reused crook blades and purlins had produced a tree felling date of 1527. As timber was then used green and unseasoned, the barn would have been built in 1528 or 9, about a decade before the dissolution of the monasteries. In Lower Winskill Barn, the results were less straightforward. The 2 crook blades of the principal rafters produced 2 different dates, about 1500 and 1570. In both buildings, the monastic links in the beams live on 5 centuries later.